'Tis only the flame quivering at misguided ash. Please avert thine eyes.
Whoops. That's not what you came here for. Let me just, There we go. Bleeded. Oh, damn it. Oh, damn. God damn it, dude. Even making it through here is gonna suck ass. Before we get into any of that madness, let me explain exactly what this run is. Basically, every single enemy in Dark Souls 3, DLCs included, is now Friede. Without scaling, mind you. Meaning that every single fight is the actual Friede fight. And things get a little bit wacky when Friedes are all over the place. How wacky, you ask? Well, let's see. And if you enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button. It helps out more than you know. Now, the first thing we had to decide on was a character, and only one stood out to me. The thief with his bandit knife. As it had a bleed effect, meaning we could potentially bleed a chunk out of Friede if we used it right. But the path to Ludex is our first problem. Oh, we are! Now, the first couple of enemies aren't actually that hard to get past, but a few mistakes made it annoying to say the least. However, you might notice something very interesting right off the bat. Those of you that have seen the All Manus video, or this absolute banger right here, which I do recommend by the way, might remember that most bosses in Souls games, when placed out of their respective zones, will just chase you down from the moment you spawn in. But Friede has a different AI that does something a little bit special. She won't chase you until she has made eye contact with you, which then she will never stop chasing you, lest you sit down at a bonfire. Now this is actually a blessing and a curse, and you'll start to see why pretty soon. But we make it up to the bonfire and see exactly what we're up against. Hold on. Oh. No. Okay. Let's see what we're working with in terms of damage here. Like I said, as far as I know, it should be unscaled. Come on. Ugh. That's not so bad. I mean, it's only like 143 hits without bleed. So I mean, it's not awful. Now this boss fight is required to progress, meaning that our first required kill is here, and with absolutely nothing to upgrade or change the build with. However, it's not all bad, as the arena is quite large, so hopefully at least practice won't be absolutely awful. Way, shape, amount of stamina. Oh my god, you bastard! Why am I stuck on your fucking knees? But no. In reality, this is a really, really long Friede fight. Is what I would like to say. But the arena makes that a far cry from what this actually is, which is suffering. Let me explain. See, the thing that I knew about Friede going into this fight was that she was backstabbable, and that quite a few of her attacks made it possible to slip in for one. And with her moveset being smaller in phase 1, this meant that I could do damage pretty consistently, but the arena made some attacks relatively inconsistent. Mainly, the ice pathway attack, as the uneven terrain made it where the ice patch could stop halfway through, or it could bulldoze right over, and I had no way to tell until the bridge either reached my feet or stopped. Other than that, phase 1 didn't really give me any difficulties other than just learning her moves and dodging them. And as it got easier, a ray of hope began to shine through the darkness. But then it was quickly snuffed out by phase 2. Well, it's about to be, I mean. But something unexpected happened first. See, I finished off phase 1 expecting a transition, but it just never happened. Now, you might be saying, hey wait, there was footage of phase 2 earlier, so what's this about? And I was confused as well, but after looking into it, I found out exactly why. See, Phase 1 Friede is her own entity because she has a cutscene. But Phase 2 Friede also gets a cutscene, meaning that there are two separate entities. So, we had a choice. I could play the entire game with only Phase 1 and lose all respect I had for myself. Or, I could redo this run with Phase 2 and Phase 3 only. And you can guess which of those I picked. And I know you might be saying, well, why didn't you just code it in? First off, I don't know how to code, but not to worry. Because in just a little bit, you guys are going to see why this made this challenge 100 times worse. Right off the bat, the biggest difference is that all of the Friedes are much more aggressive and gain access to ranged attacks that can go through walls, mainly the ice attack. But something that I noticed is that Ariandels didn't seem to spawn with the regular enemies. However, that made this a lot more difficult because of something that was not expected. But before that, let's see how the boss fight is going to go. It, did not go well. Okay, so let's break down exactly why this fight is so difficult. We are actually very lucky that we're far enough from the entrance that other Friedes don't tend to be an issue, which is a plus. But that's basically where the positives for this fight end. When we enter the arena, we have to dodge immediately so that the Friedes behind us don't hit us with ice or any of the other attacks, while also steering toward the left side of the arena, reason being that the fight opens with the same attack every single time, with Friede walking forward and or dashing to the right. But Ariandel will always do his 4-hit rush, and if we go anywhere that's not lining the left side of the arena, we end up getting blasted by this attack. And the reason for that is that from what I can tell, the arena for Ariandel is flat for a very specific purpose, being that he moves very erratically when the ground gets uneven. Now I won't lie, I didn't think this was impossible, but I did think it was going to be a Herculean task. And I wanted to try everything before I spent all of my saved up holidays trying to beat the first boss in this challenge run. Now the first thing that I can think of to change was our character. And the only one that I can think of that could maybe be better than the Bleed Bandit knife was the mercenary, with his twin blades of course. Due to, well, you know, twin blades. But that pretty quickly became a realization that it was not going to be any better. With that idea in the trash, I realistically only had one option left, and that was to pull myself up by my bootstraps and learn. And things weren't as bad as they initially seemed. The first thing that became apparent in this fight was that fighting Ariandel was the only way to finish Phase 2, as Friede is much worse at keeping you from Ariandel, as Ariandel is at keeping you away from Friede. As well as Ariandel being much bulkier and slower, he was the optimal choice to focus on during this fight. Now I think that this is a good time as any to bring up a really good point on this fight. I said that Ariandel is the main punching bag to finish out the phase. So why don't I just go all out and quickly finish it? And the answer to that is this. See, Sister Friede has a heal that she can use at about 66% HP all the way down to 0. And she is damn near silent when she does it. Meaning that I have to keep tabs on multiple things at once in this fight. And for an extended period of time as well. Which means that mistakes where I miss her and she heals are incredibly costly on time. Meaning that I have to spend an extra 5 to 10 minutes overall focusing just to get her to the same HP. Unfortunately, learning was all that we can do. And learn we did. An attack that looks like it can be strafed? Can't. An area that looks safe from an invisible ice? Doesn't exist. But even through all that, we pushed on. But as all things do, we got better. We were more consistent, and finally managed to put Friede back in the ground. at 3,000 souls, baby! Woo! If you listen closely, you can hear all of the marbles that I had been losing up until that point gather back into my head. But for now, the potential hardest part of the run has been cleared. Now, I do want you to take note of something that is going to be a staple of this run. Normally, when doing an all bosses run, if the particular boss dies, you would get that boss's amount of souls, especially on a run with no scaling, and a Friede kill should rack up a decent 72,000 souls. But this kill had given us 3,000, which is how much a Ludex kill would normally clear for, meaning that we don't get access to the large amount of souls that a run like this usually entails. Now, I did immediately notice this, but I liked this way better, as it meant I couldn't just max out my HP and make this run any easier. But with the first Friede fight finished, we had unlocked access to several different amenities, those being the ability to level up our weapons. However, our access to smithing stones is still not very great at the moment, the ability to talk with several NPCs and a trader, and the ability to level up with any souls that we might be able to get our hands on. But I had my sights set on the next area, and upon loading in, my game didn't crash, so that was a plus. Now, do you remember when I said that Friede not immediately chasing you was just as bad as it was good? Well, this is why. Friede has access to moves that do one of two things that make running around very difficult. The first being that her attacks tend to have a quite large AoE and in several directions. And secondly, most of her attacks are not stopped by walls, different heights in terrain, or my pleas for mercy. And now that I had activated the dragon, I inadvertently caused myself to have to go through the chasm of death. After managing to squeeze through, I made my way to gather all the Titanite and upgrades that I could, while also grabbing the elevator for a shortcut. But what I couldn't have possibly known was that I was about to get into quite possibly the most annoying and nerve-wracking fight I think I've ever done. Now, the arena for this fight is about half the size of the first arena that we had, with a few key differences that made this fight almost unbearable, with the key problem being at this door over here. See, when you aggro a Friede before going into a boss fight, they don't stop chasing you or stop trying to attack you, which means that they can make certain areas in the boss fight unusable. But that also means that they will use something I didn't expect to make this, without a doubt, one of my most challenging fights in gaming. I'll take our attention to the 6th attempt of this arena. I was just over half the health bar, and I had stopped Friede from making a healing attempt. And in the next few seconds I spent kiting Ariandel back into the corner, I noticed a bright glow from a Friede that wasn't the boss one. And lo and behold, the boss's health bar began to rise. That's right, the Friedes outside of the arena can heal the main boss. And it's for a substantial amount of health as well, meaning that on top of everything else, if we don't get exactly the right combination of moves to equal anything less than a perfect fight, Friede will just heal back up and we'll have to start all over again. Now, this revelation had turned this run from devious to downright cruel, because it meant that I could have to fight her entire health bar multiple times, on top of the Friedes potentially being able to do the exact same thing to phase 3 Friede as well. At this point, I was 12 hours into the run, and there was no end in sight. I died over and over and over again, attempts rising up until I had more attempts in this fight than the Ludex attempts. Until finally, after 137 attempts and a 16-minute long fight, come on, Friede. Yes! Yes, Friede! Friede! Please! Come on! Yes! Yeah! Immediately after that win, I felt like the world was my oyster. Collecting items left and right, and having actual game progression after so long, it was beautiful. Until... Nah, I'm just joking. This was seriously the hardest hurdle for probably the next 5 minutes or so enjoy it while it lasts. Now the next obvious goal was infinite Titanite shards, but God forbid if anything could be easy in this run. But after grabbing the ashes, I upgraded our knife to +3, and decided that I wanted to push the Crystal Sage path first, but after realizing how small the arena was, I backtracked on that decision pretty quickly. And with that, our path forward was through the Abyss Watchers. And holy heck, would you look at the size of this arena! It could bring a tear to a man's eye. But with this fight, it was like inhaling the finest oxygen. I was fluid, nimble, and managed to take this in one attempt. The run was far from over, but it seemed we were in a good place for now. After realizing that Invader's ankles were far stronger than mine, I went down into the lake to see if I can potentially get any easy upgrades before a bad arena slapped us in the face again. And after grabbing all the large Titanite shards and seeing that Friede clearly has lava god mode on, I went on to slaughter the old demon Friede due to another massive arena. Shortly after taking down curse-rotted Friede the exact same way. Now I really want to say that Wolnir Friede gave us some trouble, but the only thing troubling about it was the elevation of the arena. But they were soon handled. Now at this point with our upgraded gear, we did go back for Crystal Friede, but it was short work to say the least. Now I know what you're all waiting for, and I am sorry to disappoint, but with my lack of coding knowledge, the randomizer simply makes it so that there's only one Friede and Ariandel duo. But to be honest, I don't think it would have been humanly possible the other way around, with there being over 30 sets of them if it were to happen. But next on the list is Pontiff Friede, and with the massive cathedral, let's be honest, she was easily dispatched. With the God Devourer Friede not being far behind. Although I do swear, if nobody had seen the absolute struggle we had in the early game, no one would even believe this was a challenge run. But next on the list is Yorm Friede. Oh, it's over already. Okay. Now this challenge run had went from making me want to pull my own hair out to being a nice enjoyable experience. I sure do hope this lasts. But at this point, we were basically just on a boss killing spree, dropping gods left and right. I mean, if you weren't paying attention and were just listening to the sound of my voice, you might have missed the 4 bosses we just killed. I mean, heck, I had to fight one of them twice in the exact same fight. Now, we did still have a couple of fights to go before the DLC, but I don't know if I would say that anything was noteworthy in them. We're starting to lose them! Oh man! Deploy the emergency attention grabbers! Okay, now that I pulled your guys' attention back, the DLC is next. And in all reality, unless something happens that is absolutely catastrophic within the next 10 or so minutes, we honestly may just be smooth sailing until the end here. But I do gotta say, this might be the only time in the entire game that traversing this area was actually easier with this challenge. Massive arena, easy dubs. At least all things considered, I will probably be the best Friede fighter this side of the US. Now, there actually was one boss that we could not fight, and that is Midir. See, you normally have to knock him off of this cliff here, so that you can find him later in the cave. But the Friede that takes his place is actually invincible. So, all things considered, it is very impossible to reach him. But with the arena being very, very large, I think we mostly all know how that would have went down. Why did I say it like that? But next up was a takedown Gale Friede. Hey! I said to stay down! No backsies. With Champion Friede next on the chopping block, all we really had left was to take on the actual Friede. Now, I won't lie, I was scared going into this fight. I had practiced, and Well, I may have practiced a little bit too much. Whoops! But with nothing left to stand in my way, I was free to head towards my goal.